the recording. So today we're talking about peace, and our poem was made into a picture book. I don't know if you can see that, called Amazing Peace. And I decided that it would be nice to invite someone else to read for us today. And so I invited the author to come read to you, if that's okay.
Oh, wow. Oh, I forgot she's dead, but I'll
So here
pretend,
she is.
I'll pretend not.
Can you hear that music beginning?
Yeah.
Amazing Peace by Maya Angelou. Read for you by the author.
Wow. I'm getting chills.
Hi, Maya.
When I was invited to attend the Christmas tree lighting at the White House and to deliver a poem on the occasion, I was honored. Tsunami, a major earthquake, Katrina and Rita had already happened to our world. I thought of the evacuees and realized that in times of hostilities and natural disasters, each human being becomes an evacuee. I thought that what we need now most, more than food and water, is peace. I wrote this poem, Amazing Peace. Thunder rumbles in the mountain passes, and lightning rattles the eaves of our houses. Flood waters await in our avenues. Snow falls upon snow falls upon snow to avalanche over unprotected villages. The sky slips low and gray and threatening. We question ourselves. What have we done to so affront nature? We interrogate and worry God. Are you there? Are you there really? Does the covenant you made with us still hold? Into this climate of fear and apprehension, Christmas enters, streaming lights of joy, ringing bells of hope, and singing carols of forgiveness high up in the bright air. The world is encouraged to come away from rancor, come the way of friendship. It is the glad season. Thunder ebbs to silence, and lightning sleeps quietly in the corner. Flood waters recede into memory. Snow becomes a yielding cushion to aid us as we make our way to higher ground. Hope is born again in the faces of children. It rides on the shoulders of our aged as they walk into their sunsets. Hope spreads around the earth, brightening all things, even hate, which crouches breeding in dark corridors. In our joy, we think we hear a whisper. At first it is too soft, then only half heard. We listen carefully as it gathers strength. We hear a sweetness. The word is peace. It is loud now, louder than the explosion of bombs. We tremble at the sound. We are thrilled by its presence. It is what we have hungered for, not just the absence of war, but true peace, a harmony of spirit, a comfort of courtesies, security for our beloveds and their beloveds. We clap hands and welcome the peace of Christmas. We beckon this good season to wait a while with us. We Baptist and Buddhist, Methodist and Muslim, say, "Come, peace, come and fill us and our world with your majesty." We, the Jew and the Jainist, the Catholic and the Confucian, implore you, stay a while with us, so we may learn by your shimmering light how to look beyond complexion and see community. It is Christmas time, a halting of hate time. On this platform of peace, we can create a language to translate ourselves to ourselves and to each other. At this holy instant, we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ into the great religions of the world. We jubilate the precious advent of trust. We shout with glorious tongues the coming of hope. All the earth's tribes loosen their voices to celebrate the promise of peace. We, angels and mortals, believers and non-believers, look heavenward and speak the word aloud, peace. We look at our world and speak the word aloud, peace. We look at each other, then into ourselves, and we say without shyness or apology or hesitation, peace, my brother, peace, my sister, peace, my soul.
Oh, thank you.
I love what she said in the introduction, because in this year where we've hardly had any unpeace at all, right? Nothing of unrest, nothing of disconcerting stuff. I love how she said, what we need now more than food or water is peace. Doesn't that speak well to our day, our moment? Because we all have myriad things around us right now that are not peaceful. Myriad things within us. I look at the political situation and I know some of what I probably ought to do and I don't want to, right? With certain people. And yet they and I need that peace. So how do we get there? How do we get in the midst of stuff? Well, we start with those practices that we do that calm our own souls. So what do you do on a regular basis that help you to find something of peace? Judith, earlier you were talking about Reiki, and Reiki is something that allows peace to happen, right? Judith, are you there?
I'm here.
That's part of what Reiki is about, isn't it? Is about helping peace happen.
Yes. Tuning into the healing power that's inside of bodies, I guess that would be peace, yes.
Yeah.
Paragraph, the third stanza is like, that's just what I've been saying to God. Are you there? Are you there really?
Yeah.
The covenant you made with us still hold because of this COVID business surging? It makes me so worried.
Yeah. I love that section too. We interrogate and worry God. Are you there? Because in the midst of stuff like this, it doesn't feel like it. But that's why we need to have something that at least calms some of those fears, those worries, those scattered things. What else do you guys do that help you to find that peace? What are some of your practices that bring peace?
I go to bed and watch Netflix. I know how to meditate and pray and all that stuff, but or my couch. Recently, we've been building fires in the fireplace, and I find that really peaceful. The dog comes and lays down in front of the fireplace. Juan comes and lays down in front of the fireplace, and we love watching good movies.
And I know you're partially joking, but you're right that something like that where you can escape for a time is a peaceful space, right? Part of finding peace is not having to be dominated by a truth like the news, right? That you can go to another space. By the way, if you want to know a good movie, I watched an amazing movie. It's on HBO things. It's called Between the World and Me. It's a book by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and it was made into this movie, and it's just incredible. So if you get a chance, watch that.
Between the World and Me.
Between the World and Me. That's also the name of the book that he wrote. But It's
Done.
quite a number of famous people. Oprah speaks in there, and they read his actual words with just an amazing amount of images around them.
We finished watching The Crown for the second time about the Queen of England and her controversial family and life.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Tell me how else you have spoken peace to yourself. What other practices do you have?
Yeah, Jim, I tell you, prayer and meditation. Prayer in the morning, even a walk in the park, taking your companion now, whether it be a dog, cat, an alligator on a leash, whatever you prefer. The key thing, Jim, to me is meditation and prayer. There's always a God. You look at the trees, the grass, the birds. Meditation, peace within yourself is
Yeah.
one of the things that you have to find in order for you to sometimes just to go on.
Yeah.
Yes, there are many problems out there in the world. Can't solve them all, but start with yourself.
Yeah.
Prayer, peace, and your faith.
Yeah. And Juan, what's important about that is that you don't necessarily solve the problem when you go and do that, right? The problems kind of still remain, but suddenly you have a different something. It's not even necessarily a point of view. It's that something changes within you as you go back and are confronted by all of that.
That reminds me of the 4 trees that I hug in McCormick Park. I just go and lean up against them and hug them and tell them I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's something powerful about a tree, isn't there?
Yeah.
This being that probably will live longer than any of us, right? Most trees do. And the power of what it sees, even in its, to us, inanimated state. We know it's not inanimate, but it feels to it. It has something about it, doesn't it?
There's a book out now about trees. I think they've talked about it on NPR. The interconnectedness of trees. They can be 50 feet apart, but underground they're reaching each other and support each other when one is compromised by whatever insects, pesticides, whatever, the other tree tries to channel some energy. But one of the things for me, having my life so disrupted moving here, not being able to get out and find my usual support, spiritual community, an Al-Anon group, a choir, is just having routine. So, get up, wake up. I don't get out of bed right away. Do my prayers, meditations, affirmations. Then I have my, I gave up caffeine, found this wonderful herbal brew with chicory and chocolate and almonds and figs in it. And then, let the dog out just to urinate, but then 11:30, and he lets me know. He knows whether it's sunny, cloudy, daylight savings time, which we do here in the East. He knows what time he wants to take his walk. And so the day goes on, and then afternoon is variable, time change with friends in the West, some phone calls and so forth. Evening, a little bit of the PBS news, which is not drama and screaming and arguing. Just and me, who is not a person who loves routine, I find it this time of my life, it's helping a lot. Predictability.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I love this section of her poem where she says, "We think we hear a whisper. At first it is too soft, then only half heard. We listen carefully as it gathers strength. We hear a sweetness. The word is peace." And it takes things like that you've mentioned here to be able to let that whisper grow in strength, right? Because there's lots of stuff that yells much louder, right? My ankle has been hurting lately. It yells, right? And somehow I have to hear past that voice to hear the voice of peace.
Have you taken a break from jogging?
I have, which is part of my unpeace as well, in that I can't, because that's my meditation time. And when it's aching like this, I don't get to be in some of that other space as much. Everything intrudes on a regular basis, doesn't it?
So Jim, I have a question from my distance, looking like you've got the Maya Angelou class 4 times a week, and you're doing all these other things. And I don't know how you guys are organizing the Sunday services. It's just amazing, but it's got to be a lot of work synchronizing everybody, from the kids reading at home, the choir people singing individually at home, matching it up. I wonder, it seems like you must be working so much harder than you were before. Is that true?
It is true. Work is
Yeah.
not necessarily non-peaceful, though. It just is intrusive with all of its to-dos.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, my heart goes out to you. I just want to say,
I've thought the
thank
same
you.
thing, because I've been counting how many classes and groups and things and Wednesday night meditation. And by the time I finish counting all that you're doing, I'm really tired and have to take a nap.
well, let me tell you what I told both Melissa and Steve, and SPRC backed me up on this. I said, let's try to take the time between Christmas and New Year's off.
What is SPRC?
Oh, that's
Sorry.
staff parish. That's kind of the personnel committee of the church.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Let's just try to take that whole week off and not have the church open at all. We've often said that we were taking that time off, but didn't really take it off. But let's just close down completely during that time. And I think that sometimes those purposeful retreats, those purposeful closures have to happen, even if they're just for a few minutes. But we all
Yeah. Good.
So when are you going to take this quiet time?
from Christmas Eve, I always take the week after Christmas Eve off. You know why? Because the holiday comes the day after Christmas.
Uh-huh.
You know what the holiday is, right? My wife's birthday.
Birthday.
Right.
So I always take that time off. But this year, I think that we need to take that time off, meaning the whole Melissa, Steve, all of us. So,
Yeah.
and that type of idea, how we give each other gifts of vacations, I think is important.
Yes. Enjoy. Please do.
So,
When I was little, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a minister's wife. Not that I knew any ministers' wives that impressed me so much. I just thought it would be because girls weren't ministers in the 50s.
right.
So anyway, I please extend my appreciation for what your wife is doing, supporting you in all this work.
Yeah.
I'm sure she is.
The difficulty of peace is that it's not enough to just find it within me. Not that that's unimportant work, because that needs to happen. But then it has to extend into the us, doesn't it? And somehow we have to figure out how to take whatever we found in that solitary space and bring it into the rest of the space around us. Sometimes it's because that other person has some disquieting of their soul, right? Could be an empty belly that I can feel, right? Or I can help feel. It could be a fear that I can be there with them in the midst of. But the hardest ones oftentimes are the ones, kind of like what I mentioned before, that have become my enemies in one way or another. And in some ways, we are at war with each other.
I find listening to music really helpful vibrationally to find peace or change my attitude. And I'm always amazed the amount of talent at St. Francis. I can go back now and listen to a service and fast forward through things and listen to the music. Also, I like listening to Andreas Bocelli, Celine Dion.
Yeah.
That kind of music really helps me find peace.
So let me tell you, that's a good lead in, Sarah, into something I wanted to share with you today. It's a movie, and it's called Merry Christmas. Right? Here's what it looks like. Joyeux Noël. If you haven't seen this movie, it's wonderful. It's in the Library of Peace. But here's the story. World War I, 1914. Europe. French are over in this corner. Over here are the Scottish, and over here are the Germans. The big trenches, you know, the trench warfare that happened during that war. It's approaching Christmas, and the Scots begin to sing Christmas songs. Hearing that on the German side, a man who happens to be there, who is an opera singer, starts singing this wonderful aria, lifting up. The French clap, stand in awe of that voice that was singing. And together, those three sets of enemies choose to lay their weapons down for a time. Choose to let the music, like you said, take them to a different place, if only just for a day. And I wonder, what can we sing? How can we sing into each other's life in some way that we lay down the weapons that we carry? We have a lot of weapons in our world, don't we? For a lot of different reasons. But what allows us to change that? What have you found that helps you to step towards each other?
The question is, what does one person do to another to help each other?
Yeah.
Okay, first thing is, be kind.
Be kind. Helps a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. A kind word. Sorry, you can't say a handshake anymore, for now anyway.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
But I think what you just said about not being able to do some of the things we'd like to do, some of the, this isolation keeps us all in spaces of almost by definition unrest, right? Because we're isolated from each other. We can't quite be in some of those modes of behavior that might heal some of this. So even from our friends, we have some distance. But you're right, that purposefully trying to, when we can't handshake, do something different, something kind. A letter, a phone call.
A Zoom meeting.
A Zoom meeting.
Ron had a Zoom meeting this morning. He has lots of Zoom meetings.
Yeah. At least one of the reasons why, for example, you talked about all of the classes I've been doing. I've been doing those very purposeful because I need conversation. Not just because of that, but I figure if a dedicated introvert need conversation, then some of those people who are much more extroverted, we need to have that space for each other, right? Just to bring some of that community in.
I had to use many tools for finding peace within myself yesterday. I think some of you know, Jim knows, I have a goddaughter, a Mormon goddaughter, who challenges me with her religious beliefs, but she's also 9 months pregnant and about to give birth. And so she was in an interesting space. I was asking Juan, who is the father of 5 boys, if Vicky was moody when she was pregnant. And Juan assured me that first wife Vicky was oversensitive, bitchy, complaining. And so that gave me some insight into Tiffany, who just wanted to argue with me yesterday. And I was inviting her to come pick up all these baby presents, and she wanted to argue over that. But so in reference to peace, I'm finding sometimes I just have to surrender. And being the great warrior, pastor, Aries that I am, I've also learned that with Jim Wiltbank. Sometimes I just have to surrender. So the practice of surrender for me and being a warrior, those 2 words mean a lot. So
Yeah.
it's a practice. Do I want to be happy or do I want to be right? That's the phrase. And I used to want to be right. And now I'm working on let there be joy, peace, and happiness. But with my Mormon goddaughter, 9 months pregnant, and going through something she believes that men are heads of households. I don't know, Juan, did I ever let you be the head of the household?
We share.
We share. He said, we share.
Yeah.
But I have to be really careful with Tiffany, and I end up letting her do whatever she wants.
Mhm.
And that's how I can help create peace, is not have to be right.
The word I use in the commentary tomorrow, which I think is the same concept, is releasing. How do we release things? And we hold on to a lot of different things, don't we? Maya Angelou in her other poem put it this way. But this poem is the poem which the second half we use as one of our readings tomorrow. But she says, when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fists of hostility and allow the pure air to cool our palms. You know, we do so much holding on to things. This has to be completely true. I have to have this. And there's a lot of that maybe isn't as essential as what we turn it into. In this poem, she has us praying to peace and says, we implore you to stay for a while with us so we may learn by your shimmering light how to look beyond complexion and see community. When I'm busy holding on to these truths, it makes it so that I see them sometimes more than the us, right? And somehow we have to see the connection between us. But what makes it hard for you to see that in somebody else? What are some of the ways that somebody else holds on to something where it's harder for you to be community with them?
Well, this is Judith, and I wanted to share something else when Sarah was talking about, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? one of my readings this week said, do you want the peace of God or do you just want to win the fight?
Yeah.
So I made a list of all the things that I feel as if I am fighting so that I could face it and release it or surrender it to my higher power to remove the fight. And then underneath the fighting behavior would be the peace in my heart.
Yeah.
So that doesn't exactly talk about being with other people, but I just wanted to share that.
No, I think that's exactly what is one of the biggest challenges for us, Judith, is we have taught each other to be competitive and win the fight rather than some other value. Right?
What are those bells?
It's just every once in a while my computer or something will ding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've taken a look at why I'm such a warrior, or the need to be right. And there were times in my life when I did have to fight to stay alive. I would say most of my life, I had to fight to stay alive, making it through 3 cancers and 20 surgeries and all that jazz. There was a certain element of having to fight, and to then teach myself to lay down the sword. It really is a whole teaching and practice, and it does take meditation, prayer, Reiki, being surrounded by people who love me unconditionally.
Yeah.
It does take a walk in a different direction. And I also think having been a pastor, there are a lot of tools and gifts that I might have, but that I need to put them down.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about having to be head of a spiritual organization. And so I often look at all the committees you have, Jim, which in New England, and you explained to me about Methodists, but in New England, we didn't have all that help, but pastors also
Did you
like,
say all that hell or all that help?
oh, both.
Ah,
It's both. Although,
maybe both, right?
but in New England, pastors, parish ministers were in charge. And just if you think of New England and Salem, and which is in New England, they were more in charge. They did not have as many committees, and I don't think we had as many talented folk that, like St. Francis is just full of talents. And so pastoring in New England is very different than watching you pastor in Tucson, Arizona. So I think I did have to be in charge.
Mm-hmm.
There were some leadership skills where I did have to make decisions, but I was also trained as a Quaker being a team.
Right.
So when to be a team and when to use your own leadership skills.
Yeah.
So I've had to put those down. You use different wording. Maya Angelou used different wording. But so there are things that kept me alive and sustained my career that now in semi-retirement, I sort of have to learn to be quieter, listen more. But I have both tapes,
Yeah.
you know, being quiet and taking charge.
Well, and the challenge of that, Sarah, is if a certain set of skills, a certain set of behaviors has brought us through one set of challenges, we assume that they are the right skills for the next set of challenges.
Oh, yeah.
Which may and may not have any relevance in reality, but we think it does, doesn't it?
Right.
in trying to figure out how to find the right tools for this moment is truly what will help us find peace. Because if I'm trying to, you know, the proverbial use a hammer to do the work of a screwdriver, I'm going to find anything but peace,
Right.
right? I have to use the right tool in the moment.
And parenting might teach many people how to surrender or choose peace, because as we get older, we want to use the voice of wisdom, and maybe young people don't want to hear our voice of wisdom.
They may not, especially some of the wisdom that we try to give, which may have little to no relevance to what they're viewing in the world. My freshman year of college, 43 years ago now. That's pretty scary, isn't it? I moved from South Texas up to East Texas, to a little town called Commerce, and went to college, East Texas State. And for the first time in years, I wasn't running competitively. And I'd always seen running as you do this, you know, you have all these things. And suddenly I could just run, and I could turn the corner if I wanted to turn the corner. And I could stop, or I could go backwards. I could do whatever I wanted to, because I didn't have to measure my time, my distance, my effort. And it was one of the most freeing things in the world for me, because I took something out of it that had just been a piece of it up until then. In this poem, she says that we have to create a language to translate ourselves to ourselves and to each other. And if we're still trying to use some other language that used to be true and not creating the new language, then we don't get to find that peace. Like when I suddenly had to see running as a different event. So how do we create a language that allows us to speak into this moment? What kind of things are needed to speak peace right now? Because I don't know about you, but I know that the beginning of November brought a lot of peace in my mind, my heart, my life. But at the same time, some of my friends, it did not bring peace to them.
Right.
How can I, in the midst of that very different reaction, how can we translate each other?
Jim,
Yes.
in Toastmasters, it's called the 80-20 rule.
Mm.
I've been with Toastmasters for over 7 years now. And one of the key things about Toastmasters is good communications.
Uh-huh.
The 80-20 rule means you do 80% of listening and 20% of talking. Right now, I'm taking through the third phase toward my Distinguished Toastmaster Award, and it's called the Art of Negotiation. The art of negotiation is trying to come up with a good compromise where I win, you win.
Mm-hmm.
Many negotiations can go either way. I lose, you win, or vice versa. So the key thing we do in Toastmasters is try to relate, to listen, which is the most critical thing about communications. If you look at the word listen, inside of it, the words also spell silent. Mark Twain said it the best. The good Lord gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. 2 ears to listen with and 1 mouth to speak with. Communications is the essence of any kind of peace, or any direction you want to go in, to have good intrapersonal communications. Toastmasters has done a lot for me.
Good.
I believe I have evolved into a person, not the most smartest person, but it's taught me a lot.
Hear, hear.
And I've heard people who are so afraid to utter the first word in a speech or even to talk about themselves and it's called glossophobia. Glossophobia is the fear of public speaking. But I tell you what, we speak every day. It's just a matter of people getting in front of somebody and saying something and afraid of failure.
Right.
With Toastmasters, we've taken people who were so afraid to even utter their own name that in a month's time, they were up there giving speeches. But once again, communications, Jim, the 80-20 rule, 80% to listen, 20% to speak.
Well, and the challenge, of course, Juan, is for some of us, you know, living in the same household as a member of the clergy, you might recognize that my profession doesn't have a problem speaking. We have to work on the listening side, where other people have the opposite issue. And so part of what I have to do is look into the life of the person I'm trying to communicate with and say, which is it that they need? And which skill do I need to develop with them?
Right on, true.
But if I keep my eye on the goal, if my goal is peace, what I want, and I don't mean fake peace. You know how sometimes we just get to a space where we live quietly with each other, but not deeply with each other? That's not what we're seeking for. True peace has to be not just a cessation of war, as Maya Angelou says. Can't just be the absence of the conflict. It has to be something that is bringing both souls into the depth of. Right? And so I have to hear what it is that is the lack for the other person. And be able to know that in them.
The lack in the other person. I'll have to think about that.
Not just the lack in the other person, but what the lack is for the other person.
Oh, okay.
So what are they missing in life right now? What is causing the unrest for them, essentially? And sometimes it is exactly what you were addressing, Juan. It's that I won't shut up about my truth. Right? Because maybe my truth is really good, but it's not helping them find peace.
Well, I think what you have to do is, with an individual is just get back to nitty gritty. What is your problem, man?
Yeah.
But that's just a coarse way of saying things. I'm trying to reach into that person to have that person communicate with you.
Yeah. And it has to.
Whatever they want to say.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say it has to be true and honest communication. And sometimes we do this pseudo communication because it's easier, and it doesn't get to the real questions, because the real questions at first seem to cause more conflict, not more peace. And so we avoid each other and we think that's peace.
Yeah, that's avoidance.
That's avoidance. That's right. And sometimes that's also a function of privilege and power.
Yeah.
Right? If I can avoid thinking about my Black brothers and sisters because the conflicts, the struggles, the unpeace that they're talking about isn't really hitting my community, my life, that's just avoiding that at their expense. Right? If men did like we have done for centuries and just avoided listening to the appropriate struggles of the women in our lives and thinking that everything's peaceful because it's peaceful for me, at whose expense?
I've avoided a neighbor who flies a flag with Trump's name on it, and he hasn't taken it down. I was hoping he would take it down by now. A few months ago, I did stop my car and roll down the window, and we were talking about landscaping and building, and then we came upon the subject of politics, and I thought to myself, oh, I need to be really careful. But I talked to myself about how I need to roll down my window and say hello, even though he's still flying his flag for Trump.
Yeah. And accompanied with that is not just the flag, it's whatever you fear he might be because he's doing that. And if you approach him, what will he say, and what will, you know, and all of that. What conflict will emerge because of it? And we all have a hard time with that. Our other poem by Mary Oliver, did anybody read that? It's called Making the House Ready for the Lord. Listen to this. It's kind of a very interesting poem. Dear Lord, I have swept and I have washed, but still nothing is as shiny as it should be for you. Under the sink, for example, is an uproar of mice. It is a season of their many children. What shall I do? And under the eaves and through the walls, the squirrels have gnawed their ragged entrances. But it is the season when they need shelter, so what shall I do? And the raccoon limps into the kitchen and opens the cupboard while the dog snores, the cat hugs the pillow. What shall I do? Beautiful is the new snow falling in the yard, and the fox who is staring boldly up the path to the door. And still I believe you will come, Lord. You will, when I speak to the fox, the sparrow, the lost dog, the shivering sea goose, know that really I am speaking to you whenever I say, as I do all morning and afternoon, come in, come in. And I just love that, because we don't make the house ready for the Lord by excluding, but by inviting. You know, that sense of letting the mouse in, even though there's some really good reasons to not like mice. We had a cat last couple summers ago who was bringing mice into our house all the time. I didn't like it much.
Dead ones?
Sometimes.
It's a great present for you when they.
Yeah, great present. I'm sure she was very proud of her of the gift she gave me. Trying to figure out those unwanted gifts. Trying to figure out how to say come in to something that you don't quite understand, to someone you don't quite understand, is a tough thing. But that invitational type of space is the basis of peace, isn't it? Figuring out how to lay down your sword and essentially turn it into a plowshare, as Isaiah says, trying to turn it into a tool that helps us rather than a weapon that divides us, is a difficult thing, isn't it? And yet that's the essence of the peacemaking life, is stepping into that space, and the invitation to the other person to step into that space. Charles Wesley wrote a song that often gets sung this time of year, Advent season. And he goes, "Come thou long expected Jesus, born to set thy people free. From our fears and sins release us, let us find our rest in thee." And it's that sense of come, that sense of inviting, and the sense of releasing that can happen there, that brings peace. Every time we invite someone in, it will probably be at first with a bit of unrest. right? Something that we have to release and let go of because of who that other person is. So I guess part of what we have to ask is, what am I holding on to that is keeping a distance between me and that other person that maybe I don't have to keep holding on to?
I'm reading that. You gave us those words to that song, and I'm seeing born to reign in us forever, not over us,
Yeah,
but in us.
in us. That's exactly right. I like that. Thank you very much, Judith, because we often define everything by competition or by dominance, don't we?
Yep.
And God defines things through relationship. And if we're going to have true peace, we have to get more into that mode.
Could you expand upon that, Jim?
So if we think that what God is only trying to do is dominate us, I don't think we get into the right relationship with God. God is trying to be in a love relationship, which isn't one of dominance, right? It's a walking together. If I have to impose my right thinking, my right theology, my right practice, my right whatever on the person who I want to walk beside, it won't be a true relation. It won't be a true walking together. Somehow we have to be in a relationship so that I hear what that other person wants and needs as well. Take one of the main St. Francis issues, LGBT inclusion. You might notice that that's one of the places where some of our friends are very different than us. How much does it have to be in that moment that I'm trying to be in a relationship with them? Does that have to be that, do they have to be of my mind on that issue? Or can I in that moment be together with them, knowing that they are exclusive of that, but maybe inclusive in other ways? Can I sit in that space of uncompleted person in front of me and still be in full communication, full communion with them? Because I guarantee you that they're having to struggle the same way with me, aren't they? Because they see me as uncompleted. But is that the most important? Go ahead.
It just popped into my mind when you said that, how my brother's not at all demonstrative. He's really quite a withdrawn person, dealing with his wife's mental health, I guess. And we are on different ends of the political spectrum. But what an act of love. I know people who have just shut others out of their lives because they think differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a very quiet act of love that he hasn't done that. He brought me a plate full of Thanksgiving dinner because we all decided not to join together, which I was relieved because I would have been the only one at the table having my political views. And I was kind of dreading when those conversations come up, as they do. But anyway, that was popped into my mind. It's an act of love when you have a friend or a family member that doesn't divorce you because things are so loudly divisive in our country on that matter.
Right. And on a lot of different matters, right? Marty,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Marty White was in the Tuesday meeting as we're talking about these type of things, and she talked about a situation where she had made some improvement, and then she said a series of about 4 statements, and each sentence began this way: "It still isn't. Right? It still isn't it still isn't it still isn't And I looked at her and I said, you know, Marty, I sometimes say those kind of words, but I added a word at the end. I say, damn it, because I want it to be fixed, right? But in most cases, our job is to figure out how to be in that space wonderfully and well, even though it's not whatever we think is perfect. That being in the space is as much a value as having fixed the space. And can we do that? If I'm always trying to just fix the space, I'm going to throw both you, who I'm trying to fix, and myself into a space of non-peace.
So do you let go and let God instead of trying to fix? Because I often want to fix things.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part is that we are here to fix things. We're here to change things, to do things, but I feel sometimes we're changing the wrong things. Okay, so if I see somebody who's hungry on the street and I try to make them accept my religion first and then feed them, I may be doing it wrong. If I feed them first, and then maybe that helps them to discover something about my religion, I think order matters, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So there's things that I should fix, but it's usually not people that I'm supposed to fix.
Really? Gosh, God. Oh, darn.
Jim,
Yes,
I'd like to leave one final thought.
yes.
Anytime I feel lonely, I look at that poem, Footprints.
Mm,
And the one phrase in there about my precious, precious child, when you never see my set of footprints beside you, it's because I'm carrying you.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
look at that and I'm going, amen.
Juan, have you heard me tell my the poem that I heard that's like footprints? You heard? Let me tell you that because I like it a lot. I like it. I like the first one as well, but I kind of like this one in some ways even more. And we'll kind of end with this. It's the same type of thing where the footprints are on the beach, and he watches as the footprints get start walking in tandem and then come together like that. But at the end, the footprints are all over again, just like at the first. And he goes, well, where did I fail? Right? And he said, don't you understand, my child? At the end, that was when we danced. All right. And ultimately, isn't that what we want to do with all the people in our lives? Is to be in a space, a joyous space where we are together somehow or another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's I think our goal is to find the peace where we can dance together and be in a space like that together.
Black or white, yellow, purple, Mormons,
Right?
Christians, Catholics, Buddhists, Hindus.
Yep. As Maya Angelou said, to see beyond complexion and see community.
Yes.
There will still be a lot of damn it's. It's not going to come tomorrow. But if we keep working, we will find ways that we get beyond all of that. Thank you for your time.
Sí, señor.
Go and make peace in your world.
Sí, señor.
Mi padrón.
Arrivederci. Ciao.
Vaya con Dios.
Yo.
Hug a